On to Week 16 now in the NFL. Just 2 weeks remain in the regular season. And it's Christmas time. Merry Christmas to you. Happy holidays. Christmas Day falls on a Sunday this year, so the NFL moving most of the games to Saturday. Now, we still will have 2 games on Sunday, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Denver, Kansas City. And, of course, we have a Thursday night game and a Monday night game as well. But, again, the majority of this Week 16 action will take place on Saturday. It'd be a nice week to make a little bit of cash, wouldn't it? We know there's always plenty of money going out the door around Christmas time. It'd be nice to have a little bit coming back. Now, we did have some money coming to us last week. We had all 3 of our bets, so we hope to keep that going here this week. I'll be involved in 3 games once again. Would like to go through them now quickly, starting in Buffalo, where the Bills host the Miami Dolphins. Buffalo a 3.5-point favorite at BetSafe, 42 the total in this game. Now, the Dolphins have won 8 of their last 9 games. They now sit at 9-5 on the year. If the season ended today, they would be a playoff team, 6th seed in the AFC. They get one of the 2 wild card berths in the AFC. The Bills, meanwhile, still mathematically alive at 7-7, but they need to win their final 2 games, and they need some help as well. Look, it's more likely than not that Buffalo is not going to be a playoff team this season. And, of course, the story broke last week that they may be prepared to move on from head coach Rex Ryan following the season. So some turmoil in Buffalo right now. And looking at this game from one perspective, you say, hey, the Dolphins have won 8 of 9. They're playing a Bills team that is a couple of games worse in the standings. The Bills might be firing their coach. So, again, some turmoil there. And the Dolphins actually getting points. So, again, you look at it from that perspective, it might seem like the Dolphins a good play here. I look at it from a little bit of a different perspective. The Buffalo Bills, I know they lost a couple of tough games to Oakland and Pittsburgh, maybe 2 of the best teams in the AFC in weeks 13 and 14. Last week they showed they certainly haven't given up on the season by blowing out the Cleveland Browns. They still have a lot to play for. Again, they're still alive in this playoff race at 7-7. These guys seem to like their head coach Rex Ryan, as most of Ryan's players historically have seemed to like him. So they're also playing for their head coach's job, and they're playing an arch rival here in Miami. The Dolphins were able to beat the Bills 28-25 back in Week 7. That was right when this current run started for the Dolphins. That game was down in Miami, of course, but both teams very different now, especially the Dolphins. I mean, look, again, I know they've won 8 of 9, but you look at this team now, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and there are a lot of questions. The line is banged up once again. Remember, when the Dolphins started this role, they sort of changed identities on offense. They became a power running team. Their offensive line was finally healthy. They turned to Jay Ajayi. He came through with 3 or 4 really great games. But since then, that's quietly sort of dissipated. As a matter of fact, Ajayi has run for fewer than 80 yards in 6 straight games now, despite getting 12 or more carries in all those games. The line banged up once again. And a couple of weeks ago, of course, the Dolphins lost starting quarterback Ryan Tannehill to a knee injury. So journeyman backup Matt Moore now under center for Miami. Now, Moore played well last week in a blowout win over the Jets, but that was the Jets, one of the NFL's worst teams, and a team that has had one of the worst secondaries in the league all season. Moore will be facing a very different test here, going up to the freezing cold in Buffalo, facing a good Bills defense. The Bills, very good against the pass all year, 8th in the NFL in passing defense, surrendering just 225 yards per game through the air. More importantly, maybe, they're 3rd in the NFL in sacks. The Bills really get after the quarterbacks. They're going to be heating up Matt Moore in this game. Quite frankly, I don't like his chances. He hadn't played a lot of football the past 2 or 3 years. A guy, again, who has been a backup for a reason. Even when Ryan Tannehill has struggled, the Dolphins have resisted going to Matt Moore. That should tell you something. And then you look at this Miami defense. Their Achilles heel all season has been stopping the run. The Dolphins, 30th in the NFL against the run, surrendering 132.5 rushing yards per game. Buffalo, number 1 in the NFL in rushing. They have now overtaken Dallas in that category. The Bills averaging over 160 yards per game on the ground. I mean, at the time of this recording, it's too early to tell exactly what the weather's going to be like, but it should be nasty outdoors in Buffalo, around freezing. Again, Dolphins with a backup quarterback, banged up offensive line, running back who hasn't had it going lately, defense that can't stop the run. Boy, I think Buffalo is going to win this game and win it handily. Really like them as a 3.5-point home favorite. Moving on now to Jacksonville, where the Jaguars host division rival Tennessee. Tennessee a 5-point favorite at BetSafe, 43.5 the total here. No surprise, the Titans have been a tremendously popular public bet this week at sportsbooks around the world. They've won 3 games in a row, now 8-6. Tied with Houston atop the AFC South. They would lose the tiebreaker if it ended today, so they would actually just miss out on the playoffs if the season ended right now. But again, they're right in there, tied atop the AFC South, so this is a huge game for them, obviously. Jacksonville, meanwhile, 2-12. They've lost 9 straight games, and their head coach, Gus Bradley, was fired following last week's game. So that's the bad news for the Jags. Really, I guess that some people would say, 2-12, lost 9 straight games, but there really is no but. There is no coming back from that. But 9 games the Jags have played this year have been decided by 7 points or fewer. I mean, they keep it close every week. You look at their last 4 games, they have held fourth quarter leads in 3 of those games, despite playing 4 teams that are fighting for the playoffs. This Jacksonville team has a good defense. They're 7th in the NFL in total defense. They're especially good in the secondary, 4th against the pass. They keep everything in front of them. They make opposing offenses grind it out, which is why they've been involved in so many close games. Now, you look at Tennessee. Yes, when these teams met back in Week 7, it was a blowout. That game was up in Tennessee. Tennessee jumped all over them in the first half. It was never really competitive. Jacksonville's worst performance in a season full of bad performances. But you know what? Something tells me we're going to see something better from the Jaguars here. And yes, part of it has to do with the fact that every single week they seem to be in it. As we mentioned, fourth quarter leads in 3 of their last 4 games. But you know, the rhetoric you're hearing coming from interim coach Doug Marrone and the players, I'm getting the feeling that they're not going to fold the tent on this season. And make no mistake, I mean, they haven't folded the tent yet. You can't fake playing close games every week, especially when you've been facing the type of competition they have. The Jags' schedule has not been easy over these past several weeks. And Tennessee is a team with a definite flaw. That flaw is their secondary. They're very poor against the pass. Only 3 NFL teams have surrendered more passing yards than the Tennessee Titans this year. So Blake Bortles has an opportunity here. We know the Jaguars, Bortles has weapons at his disposal. Guys like Allen Robinson, Marquise Lee's really come on this year. Bortles has been a tremendous disappointment this year, but he's facing a bad Tennessee secondary. He's at home, nothing to lose situation. He's got a good defense that should keep the Titans' offense in check all game. Look, I think Jacksonville's going to keep this one close. That's not going out on much of a limb. They keep most every game close. I think they have a chance to upset the Tennessee Titans. Now, they're only a 5-point underdog, so I guess it wouldn't be that big of an upset, but I don't think many people think that's going to happen. I think Jacksonville a good bet as a 5-point home underdog there. Final game I'm involved in this Week 16. What about the Saturday night game, the primetime game? The Cincinnati Bengals going on the road to face the Houston Texans. Houston favored by just 1.5 points at BetSafe, 41, a very low total in this game. Now, the Bengals have been eliminated from playoff contention at 5-8-1, but they're a tough team that is still playing hard. Lost a typically tough, physical, competitive game to Pittsburgh last week, 24-20. Prior to that, they had won 2 straight, and they will be getting their best player back here, A.J. Green, wideout, who is such a difference maker on that offense, had missed the last few games with a hamstring injury. He will be back for this matchup on Sunday. So the Bengals will have their best player on both sides of the ball, A.J. Green on offense and Vontaze Burfict on defense, playing in the game together for one of the few times this season. I mean, Burfict missed the first few games. Green has missed the last few games. But again, the Bengals will be healthy here for this one. They've been pretty good on offense this season. 12th in the league in total offense. Top half in both rushing and passing, so they're very balanced on that side of the ball. Houston, meanwhile, has not been good on offense. Now, overall, the Texans still holding things together this year. They're 8-6, tied with Tennessee atop the AFC South. But I do believe the Texans are a team that is sinking. They have won 2 straight. They squeaked a couple out against the Colts and the Jaguars. They should have lost to Jacksonville last week. They were down the entire game, came back to escape with a 1-point win. I'm going to go ahead and say it now. I think Houston is done winning this year. I think they lose this week and lose at Tennessee in Week 17. As we mentioned, 26 in total offense. You may have heard they benched starting quarterback Brock Osweiler last week in favor of Tom Savage. A lot of people seem to be excited about that over these last couple of days. I've read some, glowing things about Savage's performance in the last game, his ball placement, his arm strength, etc., etc. Look, Tom Savage has been in the league a few years now. The Texans know what they have with him. Been a backup for a reason. He was on the roster. They knew exactly what Tom Savage was, exactly who he was when they decided to throw all that money at Brock Osweiler. It took Bill O'Brien all year to finally pull the plug on Brock Osweiler, despite him continually seeming to sort of bring the team down. I mean, Houston has a good defense and a pretty good running game. Osweiler has seemed like the weakness all season, yet it took O'Brien this long to pull the plug. That should tell you something. Tom Savage, I do not believe, will be the answer in Houston. He's got a tough game on his hands. The Bengals, a veteran defense, tough, physical, nasty, dirty, some would say, especially perfect. I think the Bengals are going to win this game. I just think they're better right now. Every year you see one of those teams that's eliminated from playoff contention, but by the end of the year you think, boy, they're playing like a playoff team. I think the Bengals might be that team this season. I like them plus 1.5 in Houston on Saturday night. There you have it, folks. Those are my thoughts for this Week 16. I like the Buffalo Bills minus 3.5 at home against Miami. I like the Jacksonville Jaguars as a 5-point home underdog against Tennessee. And I like the Cincinnati Bengals to beat the Houston Texans on Saturday night. I wish you best luck, whatever you decide to do this Week 16, just so long as your interests don't conflict with my interests. Enjoy the game, folks, and Merry Christmas.